Well, we're back at Cabot Circus and I'm watching Independence Day Resurgence, which is a sequel to the 1996 Hollywood blockbuster classic. The only names that are returning from the original: Bill Pullman as Thomas J. Whitmore, Jeff Goldblum as David Levinstein, and Judd Hirsch as David's father. Vivacia Fox is back, and Brent Spiner as Dr. Oaken. I've heard a bit of mixed criticism with this, is that it doesn't hold a candle to the original, but knowing Hollywood these days, that doesn't really tell me much, as very few sequels seem to actually are able to match the original or succeed it. Only a few have actually done that, but that's neither here nor there. So in 2 hours, will this be a resurgence of Independence Day, or just another reason why Hollywood should leave some things, well, left alone? We'll find out. Okay, we're now at the spoiler version of this part of the review. Now, if you happen to have clicked onto this video instead of the spoiler-free review, which you can see in the description below, I'll give you 5 to 10 seconds to start watching, and then you can go back to that review just in case you've gone to this one by mistake. We good? Okay. Now, as I like to do with these extended reviews, I like to go into much more detail with this. So let's just get down to the writing. I find this one has a much more fluid pacing, in the sense of it doesn't take so long to get the ball rolling and just get to the point of the movie, which is a revenge mission from the aliens that originally went to try and trash the Earth originally. And we learn in this movie that what they were after originally was the molten core, which actually powers their ships and their technology, and actually helps them to advance said technology as a byproduct as well. So we now know why they were here originally. I mean, Bill Pullman stated as President Thomas J. Whitmore, if that guy was ever a president, if Thomas J. Whitmore was ever a real life person in real life and he was running for president and I happened to be American, I'd vote for that guy. You know, decent guy. That's all you need to know. But anyway, he'd seen through telepathy exchanges with the alien mini-fighter that crashed in the original movie. He saw what they were looking to do. They go from one planet to planet and consume all their resources and move on. And that's essentially what they've come back to do with this movie. But it's also a revenge mission. It's like, hey, you kind of took us out 20 years ago, so we're going to come back to actually, do a number on you the way we wanted to this time, except we're coming back with a much more extensive hardware. And good lord, the mothership in this one, I think it's probably 5-10 times bigger than the original one, because with the original one, not as big as the one that's seen in this movie, with the 15 smaller other spaceships that go around the planet taking out various cities and whatnot. With this one, it just goes straight, lands in the Atlantic Ocean, which from what I've been told, there is a little bit of a problem in terms of physics, is that would cause the whole planet to, basically, if this was a real thing, physically that would waste the entire planet, because all the gravity would be in flux and all that jazz. Now, I'm not a scientist, never claimed to be one, but even I can look at that and think, okay, I'm going to give you a little minus point. But aside from that, the writing is pretty much still solid. We don't spend so much time building the characters up as we did with the originals. I mean, in the 96 original, we got given time to know David Levinson, we got to know the characters of Thomas J. Whitmore, Captain Stephen Hiller, and they built these characters up. But because we already have the established what remains of the original cast returning, there's no need to rebuild build these characters up because we know who they are. But I do like with this time, the experiences have changed people in different ways, particularly with regards to Bill Pullman playing a much, I don't want to say frailer, but the experience has changed him. It's made him very jaded. It's made him a little bit unstable mentally, but you can see this, how to best put this? It's a traumatic experience where he's been given mental visions over the last 20 years, and it's clearly affected him. But what I do like that Bill just does so well, he just has this real sense of patriotism that is able to motivate people. And when you see him walk out into the fighter hangar in Area 51 of Earth's Special Defenses, everyone stands to attention because they know what kind of spirit and such a motivational figure that he was with the first alien encounter in '96. Everyone looks to him for guidance, inspiration. He is a figure to be respected. They can look to him for guidance. And, Bill is, for the little amount of time that he was there, in the small capacity, he knocked it out of the park. Whereas with the first movie, as a leader of a country of the free world, he inspired a generation then to put their petty differences aside and just say, like, look, we don't put this kind of crap to one side and let it be. They're going to come down on us, and we won't have this opportunity to put it all to one side. And you still see that spirit and sense of unification that, he wanted to bring everyone together and say, look, we're all human, let's all get along as humans. And he still has that, even though he's not quite there sanity-wise, but he has the best interests of the people at heart, and they all still think of him as a president, which that's a heck of a respectable role. Jeff Goldblum I don't think there's any bad word I could ever say about Jeff Goldblum. He's just a very entertaining, I don't want to say comedic. He has these moments where it's humor implied, but he's entertaining in a comedic sense, as he's trying to pull it straight, but he's able to create something funny just as coincidence. And when you look at some of the roles that he's done, whether it be from The Fly, Jurassic Park as Dr. Ian Malcolm, which I'd love to see him come back for one more, just to do the trifecta of roles that he's come back to. Even though in The Fly 2 it's just archive footage, but he still appears in The Fly 2 and is credited as such, best to my knowledge. And to see him come back as David, he gave the movie that ability to, lighten the mood a little bit. He's able to make it a little bit more, not lighthearted, but he takes away a lot of the doom and gloom and the tension, which is always good. Now, Maika Monroe, who replaces Mae Whitman as Patricia Whitmore, the president's daughter. Mae Whitman's also the current voice of April O'Neil in the Nickelodeon Ninja Turtles animated series. I, again, couldn't really say a bad word. She plays a very concerned daughter to a former president, a girl who has grown up watching the world rebuild itself. And like father, like daughter, she was a fighter pilot, and she's very much against the idea of Thomas going to do this suicide mission just to bring this bomb to the Queen alien, and that's quite possibly the largest creature that Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin have put out on the big screen that they've done since 1998's Godzilla. And that's something we'd like to forget. No doubt I'll get asked to review that at some stage. Ugh. Anyway. Again, she just plays this very straight, very sincere, and I like the limited amount of time and chemistry that she has with Jake, played by Liam Hemsworth, and I grew to like this character right from the get-go. Jake is a guy who has a lot of character. He sees the propulsion cannon on the moon, for lack of a better description, about to fall on everybody, and he pushes the space tug to its limits, even though it fries the engines, but he knows there's this sense of responsibility and putting others before himself in order to, for the well-being of other people. And he also takes a lot of falls for people, even though it's someone else's fault, like with his buddy not paying attention to what he was doing with the cannon, and Jake just says, okay, yeah, I take the rap for that. I personally think, for story-wise, he shouldn't have done that too often, but again, it really establishes himself as somebody with a lot of character, and the sense of, he will do what he has to for friends and what little family he does have, because he was orphaned after the 1996 Interstellar War. So, plus, he's very talented, like his elder brother Chris Hemsworth, who's doing very well. I'm getting the impression like the Hemsworths are going to be the new age Baldwins. Just a thought. And then we get to Jesse Usher, who plays the stepson of Captain Stephen Hiller, who Will Smith does not appear in this movie, because from what I understand, and if my sources are indeed correct, then please do correct me in the comment section below, but the understanding that I had, that Will Smith wanted to, did want to come back, but he was asking for a salary that was more than what the studio and the director were willing to pay for. I think it was up in the sums of something like $53 million, and they basically said, as politely as possible, there's the door. Now, I don't know the whole circumstances. I think it would have been great if Will had come back, but circumstances are what they are, and they just had to try and find a way to, make that work within the story. And in a lot of ways, it gives his character's stepson the ability to step into his shoes and come. He was never in his shadow, but it allows him to have the opportunity to move forward and be able to continue the job that his father set out to do. And Jesse, to play Dylan, I felt he did alright, but he could have done with more screen time. And that's the only thing I think that hurts the performances a little in this movie, is that it doesn't really allow too much time to focus on other characters to build them up. Now, with Jeff Goldblum and Judd Hirsch, and here's the thing, Judd Hirsch, I don't know how he's done this, but that man has not aged a day in the last 20 years. You go back and look at Independence Day in '96 and look at it now, you think, what are you taking and where can I find it? Seriously, that it's either just good genes, looks after himself, or, both. But that man has not aged a day from what I can see. And, he really gives the movie, I don't really want to say heart, but he allows the mood to be lightened a little bit. He's not so much the comic relief as Jeff Goldblum is trying to be, but he does allow it to be not so tense and not so serious. And like I say, with the writing, it's a much more of a rollerball feel compared to the other one. But it's like that when you do any movie, any first movie in any series, whether, you know, or any movie that you're introducing for the first time, you have to establish the protagonist, the antagonist, what is the end goal for them, what is the end goal for the other side, and be able to balance everything out so that everybody has the applicable and appropriate screen time. And if you look at the first movie, everyone is given the appropriate development time for the characters so that you can identify with them, you get to care about them. You care about the characters in this movie, but not in the same context as you would do with the previous movie. I just felt, again, although I felt the writing was solid, I felt maybe the movie could have extended to maybe 10 or 20 minutes more. Just an extra 20 minutes, just so that these characters could be allowed to breathe a little bit more. I mean, like I say, Liam Hemsworth, you know, you get to like Jake from the word go, because he's just, like I say, he's just such a likable guy. Vivacia Fox only comes in for a coffee break in this, but you get to see that she has plenty of character as well as she had done 20 years ago with the original movie. And she's able to get one mother-to-be out of harm's way when attack number 2 comes along. But she unfortunately pays a heavy price for her selflessness. And it really does help get people to care for Jesse's character just that little bit more, because now he has something more to gain because of the fact that he lost his mother. Now, with his stepfather, from what I recall reading, is that he died during a test flight of the current fighter jets that they've got, which is a mixture of human and alien technology. It's where it's like, it's got the look of like the F-18s from the first movie, but it's probably a little bit more advanced, and of course these things have got lasers on them, just as the alien fighters did. So, you know, I'm glad there's that kind of fusion and advancement. But again, I just feel like with some characters, you know, if they just extended this movie to 10-20 minutes more, just to give these characters just a little bit more room to develop, then this would have been not a perfect movie, but a near perfect movie. I mean, as it stands with the writing, again, I think the writing is solid, just to be able to quickly get the pace going, because although it has been 20 years, you know, most people have this movie on DVD, Blu-ray, it's probably on most digital streaming services, so people have had time to acquaint themselves with the original movie and therefore be able to get up to speed with who these characters are in the original and to see where they've come this far. So I don't think a huge reintroduction is that necessary. That's just my opinion, and you know, yours may differ, and that's completely fine. But the way I see it is, we didn't need a huge reintroduction of other characters, because that's always the thing with sequels. You have to get the momentum going that much quicker, and I think this movie does that well. But with the newer characters that are coming in, like I say, just that extra 20 minutes, just to get them to breathe, just so that they could come into focus. I was glad to see Brent Spiner come back, and this has to be said as Dr. Okun, that this guy he's not missed a beat. It's like he walked off the set from when the original movie wrapped up, and he just walked back onto the set of this one the next day. You know, he's that much in character. He's very quirky, he's a little bit out there, but, you know, this is what... See, here's the thing. His character's a little bit cheesy, but that's what sets him apart from the rest. You know, with cheese, you get personality. And I find with a lot of movies these days, with a lot of protagonists, is that they drain the life out of these characters that, you know, they want the audience to care about. I mean, just look at Daniel Craig as James Bond. I purposely didn't go watch Spectre, mainly because after Skyfall, I just felt Craig was just... I'm just going to call it for what it is. I just felt he was bland. Don't get me wrong, he's a good actor, but he's not Bond. I mean, to me, Pierce Brosnan's Bond, you know, Sean Connery's Bond, but would have been interested if they had... I'd be interested if one of these days they have a James Bond movie where he does fight aliens. Maybe there's a B-movie parody of that somewhere where, you know, a 007 archetype fights off aliens. You know, wouldn't surprise me. I'd like to see that done, you know. Just don't get Freeberg and Seltzer to do it. That is all. Alright, William, is it Fichtner or Fitchner? Comment section below if I'm wrong, and knowing me wouldn't be the first time. Really solid actor. You know, you really believe he's a top brass military general. And most movie roles he's done, he just has this look and presence about him. It's like, you know, you take this guy seriously. Even though he's not conveying that message to the characters and by extension the audience, he just has this look and presence about him that, you know, even when he's been like this slightly charming antagonist from the first Ninja Turtles reboot in 2014, he makes his character plausible. Even though his character is a heel, there's something quite charming and likable about him. He, as General Adams, he's very much by the book, calling it down the middle, but there's logic to what he does. And you kind of feel a little bit of sympathy when the first female president in this particular universe has been taken out in Cheyenne, and Adams is sworn in as the 46th president. You know, he's just thrown as like, wait, I'm the president? Okay, I wasn't prepared for this. You know, Adams just takes it in his stride. And he's, you know, like Thomas J. Whitmore, this is a guy that you would want leading your team, your country, or in this case, the world, because, you know, in this particular story, all the countries of the world, they all get along peachy. And, you know, that's actually a beautiful thing when you think about it. Yeah, like I say, not as amazing as the first movie was 20 years ago, but so many things have moved along and changed since that time. But as a sequel, I think it's more than decent enough. It's not as good as the original. I mean, if I have to put this into perspective, the original sits here. Sequel's just about there. It's close. It's just not there. It's here. I found it kind of noble that... my phone going off there, my apologies, very unprofessional. I found it quite noble that Whitmore goes and goes on a suicide mission to deliver a payload into the Queen mothership because of the fact that the satellites are taken out. He knows he's not coming back, but he does it because he knows that this is the only way to keep his daughter safe, which I think from any perspective most parents would, want to do what's best for their children. And of course, Patricia completely against the idea, because as we all remember from the first movie, she lost her mother. Very, very young, I might add. But it is what it is. I find it, in some ways, it's a little cliche that they get it done with like seconds to spare, but if you get the job done and, reach the goal with, say, 5 or 10 minutes to spare, as opposed to, say, 2 minutes or a minute to spare, it doesn't have any tension. So it's a cliche on one hand, but on the other hand, you kind of prefer it that way because of the fact that if there's no tension, there's no real excitement to the story. So, make of that what you will. I find it intriguing that we have this little MacGuffin in this white sphere that is a malevolent, I think that's the correct word, virtual entity, for lack of a better description, that knows how to do away with the hive alien race, and the sense that, because from what they kind of set up at the end of the movie, is the next phase is to go to the alien hive and take them all out once and for all, because the Queen is after this sphere intelligence, for lack of a better description, to be able to move on to other planets and, still carry on doing as they're doing. It's only once the Queen's taken out that, all the mothership, the larger mothership, just, suddenly detracts from Earth and decides to 86 out of here. But it does lead for some interesting circumstances going into the next movie, which Roland Emmerich has promised that this next sequel won't take 20 years to do for the next one, which I think a few people are relieved by, because how many cast members are going to be around for another 20 years? Not saying that to be pessimistic or unkind, but Robert Loggia, who played the general from the first movie, he was 95 when this movie was made, and unfortunately the actor has since passed away, and this was his final movie, of which the movie is dedicated to his memory. So I don't know. I'd like to think that the sequel to this movie will be 2, 3, maybe 4 years away, because I don't think people want to wait another 20 years just to see this saga conclude, but we shall have to see. Visual effects wise, I think this is very much on par with the original movie, because what you got to remember, in '96 when they did this really started raising the bar in major Hollywood blockbusters for the summer, and because the alien technology looked amazing even back then, I liked that they didn't try to do anything to make it look too much more advanced, because if this alien tech is supposed to be well ahead of its time, well ahead of our standards, in terms of technological advancement, I'm glad they didn't push it so far. And CG wise, it doesn't look that different from the original, if at all. So visual effects wise, I can't fault this movie. And I like that they kept the score and the theme of the original Independence Day that was scored by David Arnold from the 96 movie. So, do I still, for this one, a must times 5. I got my money's worth and then some. I don't think this movie is as bad as some people are making it out to be. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's completely fine. But I went in this with little to no expectations. Just went in with a blank slate. Just judged this movie for what it is. And it's a good, cheesy Hollywood popcorn flick. My kind of movie. So yeah, Independence Day Resurgence is just fine with me. Until next time, folks, good night from the night.